Welcome back. It's News Hub Extra, and yes, we are on our last segment for the show today. And we're going to be looking yet again, our topic for now also still borders on fuel subsidy. And we're looking at the topic assessing effects of livelihood and security in Nigeria. All right, that's what we're going to be looking at. Now, I love the fact that the security aspect of this, most people have not dwelled on it so much, but we're going to be putting that into consideration. And you will see why we're putting that into consideration after we heard the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, speak on this issue just yesterday at the Presidential Villa. Take a look at this, and we'll be back to introduce the guest.
The oil scam cabal is a very, very powerful cabal that are dangerously loaded, and they will go out of their way to undermine this great initiative by Mr. President. I will urge our colleagues, our governors, to really rally around the President and see to it that we call off the bluff of all the machinations that will be unleashed on the polity in the coming weeks.
All right, thank you so much. And that was the Vice President, and he was very clear by talking about the fact that there is a cabal, an oil cabal, and there's a tendency that they might unleash some, well, try a thing or two on the polity. And my guest in the studio this morning to talk about this is a security expert as well. He's not the person, but Captain Bish Johnson, a retired from the U.S. Army. Yes. So thank you so much, Captain Bish, for coming on the show this morning. You heard what I want to start off from the issue. First of all, what's your thought about the oil subsidy removal? What's your thought about it?
Okay. I think it's a good thing. If you recall, in 2012, there was a first attempt by a PDP-led government to remove fuel subsidy, and that attempt failed because there was an outrage on removing that subsidy. But you discover that even subsequent governments, and even those who criticize that policy of removing that subsidy then, everybody have come to the realization that, look, this particular program is not sustainable. And it's very, very obvious that it is not sustainable because we can't afford it. And there are so much corruption in that program that is siphoning a lot of money and resources that could have been invested in other areas of the country. So over the last 10 years, when you interview most Nigerians, they will tell you that, look, that program cannot be sustained. Even though we understand that it's able to cushion the cost of buying fuel here in Nigeria. But at the same time, if you look at it, we are also subsidizing fuel for our neighboring countries. Because these marketers, the same cabal that the Vice President is talking about, we buy these products at that subsidized rate, and then they will go over the border and sell them at a higher cost to make more profit. So we are not only subsidizing for our citizens, we are also subsidizing for citizens of other countries that we have no business doing because of the same cabal that the Vice President was referring to. So there's a general consensus that this program has not well been implemented in a way that Nigerians will get the full benefit of it, that the best thing is to scrap it and use the money and invest it in other areas. Nigeria, every country in the world do subsidize one product or service or the other. Even in the US, most of their agricultural products are subsidized, right? But the thing is, how is it implemented? In Nigeria, we subsidize education. Every student that goes to federal university or federal polytechnic or federal college of education, they don't pay the same market-driven cost of education, tuition fee, because the federal government subsidizes that. Now, but Nigerians are okay with that because they're only subsidizing for Nigerian students. If you're a foreign student and you're coming to school in Nigeria, you have to pay the regular cost of tuition because we can't subsidize your tuition for you. In the US, education is subsidized. Foreign students pay higher, but their own students pay much lower cost. So subsidy is not a bad thing. It's just the implementation. And this particular one, over the years, has proven to be a too expensive, highly corrupt, senseless, and a disastrous policy because of the way it's been implemented.
So let's look at the fact. Let's hop on the conversation or what the statement of the vice president. Now, you as a security person, when the president makes that sort of statement, the vice president makes that sort of statement, and you have also confirmed that there is a cabal. How do you think they will go about trying to frustrate this move by the government?
Nobody likes change, especially when that person is a beneficiary of that change. They will want to retain the status quo. So they will fight back. They will pull all kinds of, strategy to be able to continue to maintain this status quo, including lobbying government officials with labor union to bring back the same policy. It will always happen. Nobody wants to change where they benefit. And we've talked about cabal. Cabal is what they call deep state in America. There is no country where there is no deep state. There is no country where you don't have cabal. People who will try to frustrate every effort of the government because they don't want change. They want to maintain status quo. But it's up to the government to put their foot on the ground and say enough is enough. This is what we want to do. This is part of our campaign agenda, and we must follow it to the end. Everybody, if you throughout the electioneering season, all of the three major candidates were on the same page that this subsidy is not sustainable. And there is that general consensus from experts that that particular program is not sustainable. And I think that what the people are complaining about is not about the removal of the subsidy. It's more or less the implementation of the removal itself. People are listening to labor union leaders. Their complaint is not about the removal of the subsidy. Their complaint is that there were no consultations and stuff like that. And to some other people, they say, look, we should have taken some time to put in place, measures to cushion the effect. What the people are reacting right now is about the, unanticipated consequences of that removal.
Okay.
Now, but I want to tell you that, look, that is what really happens when there is a change. After some time, the situation will stabilize itself, and people will adjust, their lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yesterday, when I was invited to this program, I almost turned it down on the basis that, look, I don't have fuel to get down to your studio.
Yeah.
So it will force a lot of individuals and organizations to change the way they have been doing things and begin to improve, use technology. For example, this program, we could have done it via Zoom, where I will not have to drive, and people will stop. A friend called me and told me, look, I filled my car with 50,000 naira. I said, wow. He said, do you know what that means to me? I said, no, I don't know what it means to you, but I know what it means to myself. He said, what it means is that, look, those days I would sit in my car and on my AC and just be eating corn, those days are over. I said, well, they better be over. If they're not over, then your pocket will be over. And so people are having problem adjusting because we are accustomed to this particular lifestyle. Where
earlier on you made mention of the fact that this cabal will
they'll fight back.
They'll fight back,
yes.
And of course penetrate certain institutions or individuals, as the case may be. That puts Labour in a very tight spot. Could Labour be genuinely agitating for the people, or you feel that Labour could also, this same Labour we talk about, could also have been infiltrated by a cabal? If they are talking about protest or talking about a strike on Wednesday.
Labour has always been, opposed to the removal of fuel subsidy. Even in that 2012, they were the architect of that protest. But I think, just like most other Nigerians, they too have come to the realization that, look, that program is not sustainable. Everybody knows that that program is full of a
But
lot
they are
of
saying that
corruption.
the government has to reverse its position.
Yes, they are asking, yeah, because that's how you, when you do negotiation, you don't start from point of weakness. You have to give those strong points. That is where they are starting from.
Okay.
It does not mean that when they meet with the government, I know that the government eventually may meet with them, and because their complaint has been that there was no consultation. And I think that they are right in that sense, that there ought to have been some serious consultation with various stakeholders. Now, they're starting off from that point, but I don't think that eventually that is where it's going to land. Government is going to eventually meet with the various stakeholders to plan out how to go about the removal of this subsidy. I don't think that the government is happy that the people are feeling this kind of pain they are feeling right now. Okay, so eventually measures will be taken to cushion the effect. What Labour is agitating is lack of consultation and the immediate impact on their members and Nigerian citizens. But I want to guarantee you that as time goes on, this whole system is going to stabilize. The price is not going to rest at that 500 and something naira that it is right now, if it's driven by market forces. You know, what happened, why the price went up, is a very simple economic principle. When you keep a supply of a particular product constant, right, and the volume, the demand goes up, the price is going to go along the increased demand. What happened was that with that, the presidential pronouncement, which is where Mr. President too has some blame, because having become president, every word of the president is a policy statement. And so because of that pronouncement, there was that panic rush for people to buy that product at that old price, believing that, look, this thing is going to go up. People want to fill up their tanks, buy in jerry cans, stock. And so because of that, there was an increased immediate demand for a product that the supply was constant. And so the price now skyrocketed. Now, after a while, if the demand goes down and price increases, and they're all driven by market forces, you will see some stability in the system and the price will drop.
But Captain, you see, here's a problem we have in Nigeria. I've hardly seen a period in this country where prices of commodities, because now I'm talking about the livelihood of Nigerians.
Sure.
Because the price of bread, if it increases, might not go down. The price of gari, if it increases, might not go down. I don't know if you remember when the price of commodities in the market increased and it eventually came down. So what do we do in this regard? Because this could still keep Nigerians edgy and untrusting of government, as the case may be. Yes, I agree. The economic part of it, you just spoke about the market forces, you know, coming into play. By the time we have more players in the industry, yes, we get all of that. But what does it profit us or profit a common man if at the end of the day the price of his basic necessities do not go down? If the landlord, for instance, increases the price of rent, and when things adjust, they may not reduce the price of rent. That is the reality we're living in. So how do we go about navigating, how do we navigate through this situation? Yeah,
you see, that is where the palliatives that the federal government has been talking about, that's where it comes to play, right?
But then Dele Alake did not say palliatives. He said
intervention.
Intervention.
Correct.
Yeah.
Whether you call it intervention or palliative is just a matter of semantics, you know, who uses what. At the end of the day, it's all geared towards trying to put in measures in place to cushion the effect of this transition on the ordinary people. Okay. Now, I personally will advise, you know, or recommend that, look, instead of subsidizing for a few people, a few independent marketers that will go and purchase at a reduced cost and still go to Niger Republic, go to Benin and Ghana and sell, you know, let's subsidize those things in Nigeria where those things that will remain here in Nigeria. For example, if you find a way to subsidize transportation right now, it will remain here in Nigeria. Nobody will take it to Benin or take it to Ghana. We have to look at the things that we will subsidize for our people that will remain here in the country and not gone overseas. Okay? I mentioned education, for example. Now, the subsidy in education is something that remains here, right? It gave a lot more people, ordinary people who ordinarily wouldn't have been able to access tertiary education, the opportunity to access tertiary education. We have to look at all those things. Look at those areas of our in the lives of our people where, you know, when we subsidize it, it will make a great impact. I give you an example. In Rwanda, for example, they were subsidizing food, you know, food products for their citizens. In fact, it's even our people, Nigerians, who advise them that, look, instead of subsidizing for the citizens, because that one will be more expensive and it will be unsustainable, why don't you target the farmers? If you subsidize cost of producing food products for the farmers, you will now, at the same time, you have also subsidized it for the ordinary citizens. Okay, so when you subsidize it, the cost of food went down, and they adopted that policy. They are implementing that policy in Rwanda, and it's working very effectively for them. Okay. So that's what we have to do in this country. We have to look at those areas. And like I said in my opening statement, I said that subsidy is not a bad thing. Okay, it's just the implementation. Okay. And because this particular one has been very senseless and costing us so much, and the benefit is very little, you know, it can't be sustained. It's taking away money that could have been invested in education, in health, in transportation, and in other sectors of our economy because of how humongous it is. Yeah. You know, the other day, NNPC said we are owing them 2.something trillion naira. 2.8 trillion naira. And meanwhile, there are reports that NNPC has not been remitting money to the Federation account. Now you begin to ask yourself, okay, how can you not be remitting money to the Federation account? And on top of that, we are still owing you. And that speaks to how expensive that program is. Because if they are spending all of their money in trying to subsidize this product, and at the end of the day, there is still deficit in financing of that program, it tells us that that is something that is very senseless, doesn't make any economic sense, and needed to be scrapped.
All right. My last question before we wrap up, because one other problem Nigerians have always had is the ability to follow up on government policies. Yes, agreed. We have NGOs, civil society organizations who do a lot of this groundwork, but for the average citizen, how would he or she be able to monitor and check that the monies that government will save from the subsidy, the end of the subsidy regime, is actually put into some of these key sectors like you mentioned earlier on?
I have always been someone that believes that the end justifies the means. Now, if government is taking measures which they said they would take to ameliorate the hardship on the people as a consequence of the removal of the fuel subsidy, the people should be able to see it. Okay, they should be able to see it, say, in the cost of transportation. Since they mentioned the president mentioned education, mentioned health, and security. Mentioned security, infrastructure. We should be able to see all those things. We should be improvement in our infrastructure. We should be able to see improvement in our education sector by way of reduction of unnecessary and incessant industrial actions that are being embarked upon by university lecturers. We should see all these things. And government on its part, especially handlers of government publicity programs, should be proactive. They should be able to come out and educate Nigerians, inform them of actions that the government is taking. You see how in the U.S. there is always White House daily briefing by the President Press Secretary. Every day is an everyday activity. Such things can be done here in Nigeria, where those who handle information for Mr. President is constantly briefing members of the media on the activities of the government and programs of the government. In that way, the citizens are better informed of what their government is doing for them.
Captain Bish Johnson, thank you so much for coming on the program today. You've really put some insight on some trouble spots on this conversation, and we've been discussing fuel subsidy assessing effects of the livelihood and security in Nigeria. And so thank you once again for coming on the program, It's been a long time though, but thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for
So,
having me.
to our guests, thank you. For our viewers, thank you so much for being a part of the program today. Unfortunately, this is where we draw the curtains on today's edition of News Hub Extra on Cyberbird News 24. Many thanks to everyone who made this happen. Do have a wonderful weekend. My name is Aonduna Inga. Bye-bye for now.